Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here and welcome to my top 10 mid to late 2000s Doctor Who stories ranking. So, in this ranking, as per usual, I'll be ranking the top 10 episodes from the mid to late half of the 2000s decade. So like what I did with the 60s, 70s and 80s. With the 90s and the early to mid 2000s, it was basically anything that came out during those years. So like Dimensions in Time, the TV movies, Curse of the Fatal Death, Scream the Shauka, Shada webcast, etc. This one's going back to what the 60s, 70s and 80s were, as will the 2010s one when we get past Series 11, with Resolution being the last one of the 2010s. So that after that is the top 10 2010s stories ranking. So this ranking is basically the top 10 stories, not only of the mid to late 2000s, but basically the entirety of the Russell T Davies 9th and 10th Doctor's era, apart from the End of Time Part 2, although the story The End of Time will be counted on this list as a whole, and in the 2010s list, a bit like the Horns of Nimon in the 1970s and 1980s list. Though, spoiler alerts, as I mentioned in the last ranking, neither of those two stories appear on either of the rankings they're being counted on, but if they were, they would be counted on both rankings if they were to appear on either or both. So that's a bit of a spoiler for this ranking, no End of Time, even though it could be counted, and the same for the 2010s ranking, although I think I'll be putting it as my 10th Doctor honourable / dishonourable mention for that one, but that's as close as it'll get. So, yeah, so basically this is basically my top 10 stories from the 9th and 10th Doctor's eras combined, and there goes the list, just falling down. But of course, before we start, some honourable and dishonourable mentions. Dishonourable mentions first, one from the 9th Doctor's era and one from the 10th Doctor's era. Starting with the 9th Doctor's dishonourable mention, Boomtown, from Season 27, aka Series 1. This one gets a mixed reception. It's usually people like it, either because they enjoy it or they think it's a genuinely good story. Whilst other people dislike it because of how it's like. Quite a few people like me are in the middle. I think it's a good, fun, enjoyable story, but there's a bit of the climax is kind of a bit well, it just goes a bit, kind of goes downhill a little bit. It's a bit more of a silly adventure, but I like how they try to make the moral dilemma work throughout part of the story, even if it doesn't come to an awful lot to anything by the end. But it still pretty works and makes the Slitheen a little bit more complex in their characters. At least Annette Badland's Slitheen character. Margaret Slitheen, Blondell Futch, I believe. My 10th Doctor dishonourable mention, on the other hand, is a more disliked story by the fan base. I already talked about it quite a bit in the last ranking, so I won't spend too much time here, but I personally enjoy the story. I like it. I find it okay. I mean, it could honestly be a lot worse. But this one is generally regarded as one of the worst stories, at least of this era. If not the worst story of this era, if it's not Love and Monsters, which will not be on this list in any way. But my 10th Doctor dishonourable mention goes to Fear Her, from Season 28, aka Series 2. Yeah, it seems a bit predictable. To be honest, I don't hate Fear Her. I think it's okay. I think it's alright. I mean, it's meh. It's leaning on the not-so-good side. But it's alright. I don't think it's particularly offensive. I don't think it's particularly bad. It's just that it's not that remarkable. It just doesn't really do an awful lot. I don't know what a lot of people's biggest problems are with it. Apart from maybe the writing isn't that great, I guess. But other than that, and the fact it's not your usual typical Doctor Who story, not so much. That being said, in more recent weeks, Cal, the council guy, has been a bit more of a popular in terms of comedy value characters where on the internet, where a couple of Doctor Who fans are just going to mention him just so that we can have a bit of a laugh because he's a funny character. I mean, maybe I don't whether they like him or not as a character is up for debate, but we still get a lot of fun from just seeing some clips of him there. Even if it's just for a joke, it's still fun to see Cal from the council again. I'm reporting you to the council! Yeah, honestly, actually, I think he's the best bit of the story, to be honest, actually. And speaking of positive things, moving into the honourable mentions. Now, these stories didn't quite make the top 10 list. One of these stories is a 9 out of 10, so even if it went a bit further, it probably wouldn't have caught the top 10 list. But these are pretty fun and enjoyable stories from their respective Doctor's era. My ninth Doctor's honourable mention is The Unquiet Dead from Series 1, aka Season 27. Yeah, I thought that one was a pretty fun and enjoyable horror and gothic horror story set in Victorian Cardiff, with Charles Dickens played brilliantly by Simon Callow. And a great first home run for the new series. Although I did like Rose and the End of the World, but The Unquiet Dead is certainly where the show started to go a bit more darker and have a bit more creativity. Although we did have quite a lot of creative monster designs in the previous story. And after the two-parter with farting aliens, the show went even darker with a story that will be coming up further down this list, and I mean a lot further. My 10th Doctor honourable mention, on the other hand, Unquiet Dead was the 9 out of 10 stories that I mentioned. This one is a 10 out of 10 story, and sadly, not all the 10th Doctor's 10 out of 10 stories are going to be on this list. For starters, there's 14 of them. Secondly, 4 of the top 10 have been ejected to allow for the 4 10 out of 10 9th Doctor stories to be included. Otherwise, this list would be another rehash of the 10th Doctor's top 10 stories list. But this story was originally my number 7 of the 10th Doctor top 10 stories ranking, and I thought it was a great, scary horror based on the Siege story, and a great science fiction story adventure. From Season 28, aka Series 2, The Impossible Planet and The Satan Pit. Yeah, things aren't looking too good for Series 2 on this ranking, considering this is my second favourite story of that series. Whoops. On the plus side, there's a couple Series 1s, so it's not all bad. Okay, but in all seriousness, The Impossible Planet and the Satan Pit is a brilliant, epic, scary masterpiece of a story. Great supporting characters. The Ood are great, although they get expanded more and are even better in Planet of the Ood. They're still handled really well there. And the devil himself is really great. And Gabriel fucking Wolf. If you didn't love him as Sutekh, you're gonna love him as the Beast. And if you loved him as Sutekh, you're really gonna love him as the Beast. Moving into the top 10 list itself, starting off with number 10. Some people are going to be a bit disappointed this one's this low on this list, but in all honesty, considering the entirety of the era, this one is pretty high. As you can tell, it's a top 10 list of about... how many stories was there? Well, it was about 10 series 1, 2... and 4, that's about 30, and 9 in series 3, that's 39, plus 5 Christmas and New Year special stories, that's 44, and another 2 specials, 46 stories across the 9th and 10th Doctor's eras. So, yeah, there's about 40, out of 46, 10 is pretty good. And this is from series 3, aka season 29, The Human Nature and the Family of Blood. This was a great emotional and really entertaining, epic 2-part story. One of the most popular stories of the new series. Saw the Doctor not really around for the story that much because he's turned himself human to hide himself from the Family of Blood. So instead you get John Smith for 2 episodes. But... as the Family of Blood approaches, John Smith has to make up his mind whether he becomes the Doctor again or gives him up to the Family of Blood. So, yeah, this is a great emotional roller coaster of a story. We get to like John Smith a lot. Martha gets a lot to do in this story. Has a very responsible companion role, and the supporting characters are brilliant. Moving on to number 9, another story where the Doctor's not really involved that much. We got a couple of those in both these 2 latest rankings, with this one in the 10th Doctor ranking. As number 9 gives us a universe where or at least a world where the Doctor this does not exist anymore. It's a universe where the Doctor dies during the events of The Runaway Bride, which will not be on this list. And Donna Noble is trapped in a parallel... Well, she's experiencing a parallel universe without the Doctor. Number 9 is from Season 30, aka Series 4, Turn Left. What a great story. Not only is it giving a world without the Doctor, but it gives us a kind of a dystopian world. And what a great character piece story for this. This one is just an absolute brilliant story. And so good. It also works as a pretty good way to reintroduce Rose Tyler as she's trying to get back across different dimensions to get to our universe for... so she could get back. But then also... the whole reality bomb Dalek stratagem from the Series 4 finale is also building up, so that's also a concern as well. And this is a great way to lead into that. And what a story. Number 8 is another great emotional story for a companion, this time Rose Tyler herself, coming in from Series 1, so we're on to a 9th Doctor story this time. So from Series 1, aka Season 27, Father's Day. This is another fantastic rollercoaster emotional story, written by the same writer as Human Nature and the Family of Blood, Paul Cornell. This one is just amazing, just absolutely amazing, and just an emotional, thrilling masterpiece. Some really great stuff here, and just some marvellous moments. Another story where the Doctor actually does kind of disappear from the story at times. So it really is a character-driven story for Rose, as well as the supporting characters of this story. Sean Dingwall is great as Rose's dad, so I was glad to see him come back in Series 2. Well, as Parallel Pete. And got some really great moments from some other supporting characters, and a couple of great moments from the Doctor himself. Especially when he tells Jackie Tyler to do as he says, "Go and check the doors." My door's over there. So another great story. Immediately followed by another amazing story in the series, also from Series 1, aka Season 27. Number 7 is another historical horror-esque story from Stephen Moffat, and spoiler alert, all 4 of his stories are on this list. This is the first, although it's my least favourite out of the 4, it's still absolutely amazing. You can tell because it's 7th on this list. The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances. What a great story, and just a freaking masterpiece in Series 1. Great supporting characters, great setting, introduction of Captain frickin' Jack, although he was a character created by Russell T Davies, but he's introduced in a spectacular way here. And some amazing moments with the Doctor himself. If you were feeling getting fatigue, non-Doctor fatigue, or the complete opposite of fatigue, with no Doctor presence in the first 2 stories of this list, and also kind of disappearing a little bit in Father's Days, mainly when he gets eaten by the Reapers. If you're kind of a bit getting the opposite of fatigue of Doctor, fatigue of non-Doctor, then don't worry, got quite a bit of Doctor in this 2-parter, as he gets a lot to do when he's investigating the Empty Child, as well as trying to find the Tudor warship, or ambulance, as Captain Jack puts it. And yeah, it's a great World War II set story, and a really entertaining adventure. And this was the story that gave many children nightmares back when they first saw it in 2005. Teenagers too, apparently. And whilst I didn't see it on when it first broadcast, when I did catch up with it, I did really like it. And now I consider it a masterpiece. So, moving on to number 6. The second Stephen Moffat written story, this time another historical, sci-fi historical, this time adding a bit of romance to the picture. Number 6 is The Girl in the Fireplace from Season 28, aka Series 2. Another masterpiece with the Doctor becoming the imaginary friend of Madame de Pompadour, A beautiful performance by Sophia Myles, and she and David Tennant have amazing chemistry. The romance is believable. Arthur the horse is one of my favourite non-human/humanoid supporting characters of the entire frickin' show. I don't care if he's just a horse. He's a frickin' awesome horse. Rose and Mickey are pretty cool, despite them not getting an awful lot to do, and the Clockwork Robots are pretty interesting monsters in their own design, as is the concept of the story. Some really great and amazing stuff, and one of the most iconic scenes of Doctor Who history, where the 10th Doctor rides Arthur the horse through that mirror to go and save Madame de Pompadour from the Clockwork Droids. Awesome. Doctor Who does not get much better than this, apart from the top 5 stories on this list. Starting with number 5, the 10th Doctor's penultimate story, discluding Dreamland. As the incumbent incarnation that we're watching, of course, he will also appear in Day of the Doctor, and it's likely he'll get a few more multi-Doctor appearances later down the line, not to mention expanded media stories. But as far as TV stories were concerned, this was the penultimate 10th Doctor adventure. And what a fantastic adventure. Ladies and gentlemen, don't drink the water, for it is The Waters of Mars, the third of the Series 4 Season 30, 2008-10 specials. Oh no! Oh, it's okay. It's earth water. It's okay. I'm okay. I'm not going to start having water come out of me at places. Anyway, Waters of Mars, fucking awesome. Another fantastic dilemma story like Eyes of Pompeii, which will not be on this list. This is a fantastic story that whether the Doctor having to decide whether he gets involved or not, and the consequences of when he does get involved. Great human supporting characters, especially Adelaide Brooke. Great monster, and just an outright fantastic feel and mystery to the story, and sense of dread. And I used to kind of not really care that much about whether it was because it was a fixed point in time set in the future. I didn't really care an awful lot before this rewatch, but during the rewatch, it kind of made more sense to do a future point in time story than a past one, like Fires of Pompeii, in order for the time of victorious stuff to happen without it actually changing anything we already know. So I have to tell my past self, you were kind of a bit wrong about that, and now my current incarnation... I can't regenerate. I'm not the Doctor. I'm not even a Time Lord. As much as I'd like to be. But yeah, the whole changing time stuff, fixed point in time stuff does work here, and it is careable. Plus, you can care about the supporting characters as individuals rather than as a group of people. Even though we don't get a huge amount of them, because we're mostly focused on Adley, but they're still really great characters in their own right, and it's nice to get moments with them throughout the story, and they're really fun characters. Moving on to number 4, we're back into Stephen Moffat territory with my favourite Series 4 story. We've already had my favourite Series 2 one with Going in the Fireplace, and my favourite special with The Waters of Mars. But this story is another absolute amazing story. And this one is just magnificent. Science in the Library and The Forest of the Dead from Season 30, aka Series 4. Now this one topped Human Nature Family of Blood as the story that had the best 10th Doctor performance, David Tennant's performance of the show, which was then stolen by The Waters of Mars. But this one still has quite a lot to go to offer. For starters, the best story with River Song, probably, or at least the best portrayal of River Song, at least, and a great setup to the whole mystery. Even though he doesn't know me yet, spoiler stuff can get a little bit repetitive in places. It's not too bad. It's handled really well. The storyline with Donna is really great, and the whole adventure inside the library is absolutely marvellous. And another masterpiece story from both Stephen Moffat, who is clearly the best writer of the Russell T Davies era, with 4 10 out of 10 stories in a frickin' row, if you discount Time Rush. There's a bloody reason why people wanted him to become showrunner. And whilst we can look back now, maybe some people consider him the worst or one of the worst showrunners, no, there was no doubt back in 2008, pretty much everybody wanted him to take over, unless they preferred someone else. But there was a reason why he was considered the best writer at the time. And whilst he starts to fall from grace once his era begins, well, not straight away, because the 5th story he writes makes a total of 5 story streaks with the 11th hour. We'll be getting to that next time. But after the 11th hour, he goes down in places. I mean, it's natural for the showrunner, but then it goes really downhill a bit later on. But for series 1 to 4, and series 5, episode 1, he was fucking awesome. And this story is another masterpiece story in the masterful series 4, season 30. My personal favourite series of the entire show, considering how fucking awesome it is. Literally, I mean, even The Doctor's Daughter, which I wasn't so certain about, I still liked. So there wasn't really a bad episode. I mean, The Doctor's Daughter comes close to being meh, but it's not really bad. Unicorn and the Wasp I really like, and everything else is fantastic to outstanding. This is my favourite story of that season, though, so my top 3 are from series 1 and 3, one of which is another Steven Moffat story. But that won't be the next story on this list, as number 3 comes from one of the best guest writers from Doctor Who, and it's such a shame he doesn't come back, but at least we still got plenty of Big Finish from him to enjoy, and including Jubilee, the story that was the basis for this story. Coming in from season 27, aka series 1, one of the all-time greatest Dalek stories, and the first Dalek story of the revived series, Robert Shearman's epic, Dalek. Holy shit, this story changed everything. Series 1 was off to a great start already, with a great restart with Rose. End of the World was fun and has great alien creatures involved. Unquite Dead, as I've already mentioned, was amazing and great gothic horror historical story. And even Aliens of London World War 3 was quite a fun contemporary story. And then we get Dalek, and oh my god, this story was everything. This story was absolutely fantastic, as the Ninth Doctor would put it. Emotional rollercoaster ride, great character development from both protagonists, antagonists, and supporting characters. Fantastic supporting characters, apart from Adam Mitchell, but it wouldn't be so bad if he hadn't become a companion at the end. The Dalek is fucking awesome. This is probably one of the best individual Daleks of the show, and Nicholas Briggs does a fantastic first performance of the Dalek. Well, first performance in the TV show. He'd been doing the Dalek voices for years at Big Finish, since 2000 at least, or 1999 for the production, 2000 for a release. But for the TV show, this is his first go at it, and he's outstanding. And just an absolute brilliant story. Not only that, but we also find out more about the Time War, as well as the fact that not only was it the Daleks the Doctor and the Time Lord were fighting, but it was the Doctor who had to end the Time War in the first place. And now 2 survivors of that Time War come face to face for the first time. Let the sparks fly, as the two have to figure out who they are, which sort of helps the Doctor realise who he really is by the end of the series, and we'll be getting to that, but before we do that, my favourite 10th Doctor story awaits. Number 2. This story, again, is a masterpiece. This story is absolutely freaking amazing. My favourite Series 3, aka Season 29 story, my favourite Steven Moffat story of the Russell T Davies era, and my favourite 10th Doctor story. From Season 29, aka Series 3, Blink. Blink is a masterpiece. Absolutely freaking amazing. My only kind of complaint is that Martha isn't in the story that much, which is a bit unfair. But she still has some good moments there. But other than that, it's great. Despite the Doctor not being in it that much, he still has a great presence in the story, and I have no shame in saying it's my favourite 10th Doctor story, despite not much 10th Doctor. It's okay for a Doctor-like story to be your favourite story of that Doctor's era, if you like, especially if it's Blink, or Turn Left, or for the 11th Doctor's era, The Girl Who Waited, which is a popular one. But yeah, Blink is just absolutely amazing. Great direction by Hattie MacDonald, fantastic writing by Steven Moffat, outstanding performance by Carey Mulligan as guest main character Sally Sparrow, and just an absolute frightening but still thrilling thrill ride of an adventure. And the Weeping Angels themselves are just magnificent. This is easily their best depiction, and it's also a really emotional story as well, in places, and yeah, just really well handled and really well put together. But there's one story from the mid to late 2000s that tops every single story. In fact, this story tops every single story of the entirety of the new series, apart from maybe Dave the Doctor. We'll see when we get to that one. But my number one choice tops every single other new series story throughout the entirety of the new series so far. And it was the 10th story, the 12th and 11th episodes ever made. And it's still the best one, apart from maybe Dave the Doctor. But I'll make my final choice when we get to that. Because if that isn't my favourite story, then this one would be. And it's my fourth at the moment. It might even go to third if Dave the Doctor goes down. Favourite story of the entire show. And my second favourite Dalek story of the show. Dave the Doctor doesn't really count as a proper Dalek story, but after Remembrance of the Daleks from season 25, if you just take out the entirety of the Wilderness series, this is just from 2 seasons ago, or nearly 3 seasons ago. So that's the start of a series. This is the end of a series. But this story, just fucking marvellous. And to be honest, this is the best final story for a Doctor ever. I mean, again, Dave the Doctor has a regeneration, but I don't know if you can actually count it as a proper final story, as it's the War Doctor in that one. But this one is the final story for the 9th Doctor, and he goes on a fucking high note. It's probably also the best series finale of any series, classic or new series. You all know what this is from season 27, aka series 1, the masterpiece known only as Bad Wolf and The Parting of the Ways. I fucking love this story. This is how you end a series, and it's still big, epic, but doesn't have to go too big or too epic. You can save those for later series, but this one still is a big, epic adventure without having to go too big. But the stakes are as high as they could get for now, and it's an epic rollercoaster ride. Great characters, story arc as well, storylines as well. The 9th Doctor on full form, with Christopher Eccleston giving his final fantastic performance as the Doctor. Billie Piper and John Barrowman are fantastic as Rose and Jack, and great supporting characters alongside them. The Daleks are at their best in the entire show, even more so than Remembrance of the Daleks, maybe. And Nicholas Briggs, once again, fantastic as the voice of the Daleks. He's just fucking awesome. Can we just call him the God of all Daleks? Which is ironic, because we got the God of all Daleks in this story. The Emperor, or at least the self-proclaimed God of all Daleks. Worship him! Worship him! Worship him! Pretending these are sucker arm and gun harm. Trying to be a Dalek. But yeah, just absolutely amazing. Fantastic score by Murray Gold. The production team put a lot of fantastic effort into creating this story with the visual effects, the sets, the direction by Joe O'Herney, who also directed Dalek and Father's Day, and I think Boomtown as well, actually, yeah. He's magnificent. He's fantastic. He does a great job. Russell T Davies' script is beautiful, heartbreaking, and amazing. And it's all put together spectacularly, fantastically. It's just an absolute amazing story. And, oh boy, you know, this is such an amazing story. It's just so good. It's so good. And that final scene in the TARDIS with the regeneration, you know, I got a bit emotional when I was talking about David Tennant's regeneration in the End of Time review, but in all honesty, Christopher Eccleston's regeneration is the most emotional and the best. Yeah, we only had one series with him, but that at least gave him time to give him an arc across his series, which Chris Chibnall seems to be doing with Jodie Whittaker at the time. But the fact that Series 11 only had one mention of the Timeless Child in its entirety makes me think I don't think it's going to be quite as successful as the 9th Doctor's story arc, which is to allow other people to be inspired by him in order to help save the day, or save the day themselves. And the whole point of the 9th Doctor in Series 1 of the new series was that the Doctor made people better. Yeah, he didn't always succeed, but for the most part, he made people better, and that's where, and not to mention that he found himself following the events of the Time War, which to him, he thought he had destroyed the Time Lords and the Daleks and pretty much everything. And whilst there were survivors of the Time War, he still felt like he was the last survivor throughout most of the time, whilst if the Doctor would prove otherwise, due to that being a multiple Doctor story where the 11th, or technically 12th, Doctors were the latest incarnations, they wouldn't remember that. Therefore, the War Doctor regenerates whilst knowing he saved Gallifrey. The 9th Doctor would be born thinking that he had. and that puts his character into a bit more perspective. And so it's across his time with Rose Tyler and his other friends like Captain Jack, Mickey, and even bloody Adam Mitchell, where he realizes that he is indeed a good man. So when he's put into another similar situation like he did in the Time War, when he's prepared to destroy the Daleks, but he's also got the humans also in range of his Delta Wave, which would kill all of them, no matter who they were. He can't put himself to commit another double genocide yet again, even if it meant the Daleks could win this time. It is such a fantastic climax and a great personal end for the Ninth Doctor's era, and it warrants the Deus Ex Machina return of Rose Tyler, aka the Bad Wolf, to come in and save him. And I'm getting fucking emotional just thinking about it. Okay, breathe. I'm sorry, this story's just so fucking good. And you know what? I didn't want him to go. Oh god, I'm starting to cry now. I didn't want him to go. That's all I need to say, really. Better wrap this up quickly. Okay, so that's it for my top 10 stories of the mid to late 2000s. So basically the 9th and 10th Doctor's eras. To recap the list, number 10 is Human Nature and the Family of Blood. Number 9 is Turn Left. Number 8 is Father's Day. Number 7 is The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances. Number 6 is The Girl in the Fireplace. Number 5 is The Waters of Mars. Number 4 is Science Library and Forest of the Dead. Number 3 is Dalek. Number 2 is Blink. And number 1 is the masterpiece known only as Bad Wolf and The Parting of the Ways. You can tell the Russell T Davies era did a lot of fantastic emotional stories. Look at how many of them are on this list. Well, that's it from the 9th and 10th Doctor's eras, and that's it from the mid to late 2000s, and that's it from this ranking. Okay, can't end this ranking sad, even if it's happy sad. Something positive. What's the first episode of Series 5, the 11th Doctor's era? What we got next? What will I see you guys next time for when we start in a lot of new eras, the 2010s, after the End of Time Part 2, the 11th Doctor's era, Stephen Moffat as showrunner. What we got to look forward to start with. The story that I said was Stephen Moffat's fifth 10 out of 10 story in a row. His 5th consecutive, fantastic, outstanding story. What we got first? I'll tell you what we got first. If Bad Wolf Parting of the Ways was the best final story to a Doctor's era, then the 11th Hour is the best first story of a Doctor's year. So I'll see you guys next time where we start Series 5 and the 11th Doctor's tenure with Series 5, Episode 1, the 11th Hour. And I am personally looking forward to that story. Anyone who couldn't believe Doctor Who could survive after David Tennant left, strap yourselves in. It's going to be a bumpy ride, but we'll be off to a smooth start. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. So, let us get... my 10th Doctor dishonourable mention is is a bit more of an unpopular, if it's not Love and Monsters, which will neither be moving into more but The Unquite Dead is certainly where the show started to go more in. My 10th Doctor on, and before we move on to the next bit, I have to quickly mention Fear Helen Bhutan from season 28, aka series 2. Okay, onto the 10th Doctor honorable mention. Secondly, 4 of them have been ejected. 4 of the to allow space for 10 out of 10, to allow for space of the and a great science fiction adventure. Number my dear. Excuse me. Moving on to the top 10 properly now, and we'll start with number 10. Another, moving on into top. Number 8. Ooh, Series 1. Number 8. Coming from Series 1. Finally, a 9th. Coming from Series 9. So Series 1, aka Season 27. Father's Day. Because he gets quite a bit of character growth. Character... So no doubt he'll get a few other multi-Doctor appearances at least a few times down. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats and don't drink. Ladies and gentlemen, don't drink. The third of the 2008 to 10. So actually my but yeah, this story, even though again they don't have a huge amount. Moving on to number 4, we're back into Stephen Moffat. Silence in the Library and the Forest of the Dead. Silence in the Library and the Forest of the Dead. Even if it can be a little done a bit too much, it still can. Even if it can get a bit repetitive of the just another freaking masterpiece, not just from Stephen Moffat, but from the master and another masterpiece from not just Stephen Moffat, the master. And not just, and whilst we can look back on his era now and kind of disagree with what the people at the time pre-Stephen Moffat becomes, and whilst he starts to slow down, well, not straight away. Obviously, his first story and it's also another masterpiece. Robert Shearman's epic Dalek. Apart from Adam Mitchell, but it wouldn't be so bad if he became a companion at the end. And same with apart from Adam Mitchell, but it wouldn't be. From Blink is so masterful, especially if it's Blink, or Turn Left actually, especially if it's Blink or Turn Left, or oh, shut up! It's great direction by Hakeem. Fuck myself. Fantastic performance by Carey Mulligan as our main supporting character. Well, I suppose our main character for the episode, Sally Sparrow, as Dr. Snotterrat. Fantastic performance by Carey Mulligan as guest main character of the story Sally Sparrow. What is wrong with me? And as guest, it's probably also without having to go massive, but still. By going, and just to feel the Daleks are at their best since we only had one. I don't think it's gonna become as a great personal end to the Doctor's to the Ninth Doctor. Okay, okay, I'll tell you what we got first. I'll tell you what we got first. If Bad Wolf Parting of the Ways is the best final story for a Doctor's era, The 11th Hour is the best story to start a Doctor. The 11th, if Bad Wolf and strap yourselves in and prepare yourselves for a ride. It's going to be a big one. It won't be, and trust me, it's going to be a bumpy one, but there's going to be some positive. Strap yourselves in for